This is a demonstration of a metronome driving a beat display in Midi Designer Pro 2 without requiring an external clock source. The metronome is implemented with a dynamic clock module in the MidiFire app by Audeonic, available in the App Store. It is available for both iOS and Mac OS. MidiFire StreamBiter converts the MIDI from the dynamic clock to implement the beat display in Midi Designer. The demo features a metronome tempo control with a tempo range from 20 to 200 beats per minute. The beat display is a simple 4 beats per measure, which can be expanded to other selectable beats per measure. The layout can also easily be modified for other tempo control implementations, ranges, and values to suit your needs. It can easily be added to any functional layout you currently use. The beat display is a standard layout that has been addressed in several past Midi Designer Pro Q&A forums and Facebook groups. The Start-Stop button starts and stops the output from the dynamic clock. The beats labeled 1 to 4 receive and display the beats generated in MidiFire. The MidiFire scene consists of Midi Designer Pro 2 input and output interfaces. The principal element is the dynamic clock, which generates a MIDI output at a rate equal to 24 times the displayed beats per minute. There are input and output StreamBiter modules connected to the dynamic clock. The input StreamBiter receives MIDI messages from Midi Designer Pro to start, stop, and set the tempo. The output StreamBiter divides the output from the dynamic clock by 24 and outputs MIDI messages to Midi Designer Pro representing each of the 4 beats. The demo clock control consists of a slider to control the tempo of the MidiFire dynamic clock. It uses name ticks to display the tempo label. Alongside the slider is listed 15 programmed tempos. It is easy to modify the number and values of tempos available. 2 optional clock control implementations include an incremental digital control that includes all possible units and tens and several hundreds, and a variation of the slider with tempo displays within the control itself. Thus, the tempo display below it is optional. Next, I will present details of the design for those that are interested in listening. The dynamic clock requires a single byte SysX message, F8 to start and FB to stop. I generally use F058XX from Midi Designer to program StreamBiter. For start, the demo uses F05805 7F7, and for stop, F05805 00F7. The input StreamBiter will recognize the Midi Designer MIDI message and convert it to the dynamic clock start or stop message. To control the demo's beats per minute, the dynamic clock requires the SysX message F0 5A thousandths, hundreds, tens units, tenths, hundredths, F7. Example: F0 5A 01 20 00 F7 equals 120 beats per minute. Note: F0, 5A, and F7 are hex values, but thousands, hundreds, tens units, and tenths, hundredths are two-digit decimal values. Controlling the dynamic clock tempo with mixed hex and decimal digits is a hack in and of itself. Hopefully, this description and comments in the StreamBiter code will explain how this is accomplished. To control the dynamic clock tempo, the clock control slider triggers outputs F0, 58, 00, 0 hundredths, 0 tens, 0 units, 00, 7F, F7. For example, F0, 58, 00, 01, 02, 00, 00, 7F, F7 equals 120 beats per minute. Note 01, 02, and 00 represent both hex and single-digit decimal values. The input StreamBiter will recognize the MIDI Designer MIDI message and convert it to the dynamic clock format. For the beat display, the dynamic clock outputs the 1-byte sysx F8. The rate is 24 times the displayed beats per minute. The output StreamBiter first divides the clock by 24 and then divides by 4 to represent the 4 beats per measure in the demo. Thus, the output to MIDI Designer is F0, 58, 58, 00, F7 for beat 1, 2A for beat 2, 55 for beat 3, and F0, 58, 58, 7F, F7 for beat 4. It resets to beat 1 at start and parks to beat 4 at stop. The StreamBiter code is displayed on banks 3 and 4 of MIDI Designer. You can copy them in design mode and paste them into their respective StreamBiter modules in the MidiFire app. Since there isn't enough room to list the entire input code in one column, the continued section to the right on bank 3 must be added below continued in the main column. The first if end is only used for the slider clock control. The if end code for F0, 58, 01 through 04 is used for clock control 2. Only one control code is required. The last if end, F0, 58, 05, is required for either control method. In conclusion, if you have any questions or comments, contact me at djsorg2062@gmail.com. Thank you.